to a study session of the Littleton Planning Board. Get used to saying that. On September 24th, 2012. Roll call, please.
Board Member Bagnall. Board Member Coronado.
Here.
Board Member Duzan.
Here.
Board Member Elrod.
Here.
Board Member Graham.
Here.
Board Member Metcalf.
Here.
Board Member Ranville.
Here.
Board Member Rudnicki.
Here.
Board Member Samuelson.
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. And seeing as we don't have a copy of the agenda, are there any changes to the agenda? Oh, you brought a copy? Okay, good. I wrote it down. I'm good. Thanks.
It's pretty lean.
So seeing none, we'll move on to general business. And I guess, Glenn, do you want to start, or you want to wait till Dennis gets back to update us on Inspire Littleton?
Yeah, Dennis has a presentation tomorrow. Is our last evening so far that we have scheduled. So, and it'll be right here in the council chambers. He's done a lot of outreach as far as get a lot of participation, so I expect a pretty good sized crowd, and he'll run through the presentation. The idea is to show everything we've learned to date. So we're going to go through what we've heard both online and at the public hearings. We're going to be putting up a lot of the some of the drawings that we've done over the various meetings up in the community room. All the post-it type of ideas are going to be presented up there as well. So before and after the meeting, people can float through and see what we've amassed so far. So that is, I think, about it, and I've stalled long enough. And,
Excellent job.
I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Great, thanks. As Glenn said, I think we've been really looking forward to the meeting tomorrow night. In preparing for it, we've sent out invitations to the top participants online and gotten responses from some of those. We also had MindMixer send out an email blast to everybody who's been participating, so all 508 people who are participating at this point. It's looking really good. Our age is still 46.1. We came down a little bit because we had the cheerleaders, and then we had a few other people participate. The youth in government program, we had them joined, and so the age came down a little bit, but not as much as we might have thought initially. So pretty wide participation, 53% women, 47% men. The gap seems to be widening a little bit, but I think great participation from folks and good comments. And what we've been doing is we have an intern who you met who went through and started putting together the comments, and that's been an interesting process in terms of how do we coordinate those, how do we actually analyze those, and it's been a pretty complex series of connections and intricacies that we're trying to figure out how do we actually make those interconnections. But it's a good process. What I want to do tonight is actually go through the presentation for tomorrow night and get your comments on that and see what you think. Also, I don't know if you've seen the presentation online from the Inspire Littleton website, and what's on for came up with the different forums, the video of what I love about Littleton. If you've seen the composite on that, I thought I'd run through that too. It's something we're thinking about either running before the meeting or as one of the first parts of the meeting, so I want to get your sense in terms of is that something we should do before, or is that something we should do during the meeting itself? It's real upbeat. I think it gives a good overview in terms of the big commitment to community within Littleton, and that's one of the overriding things that we keep hearing is community and how much people love Littleton for the schools, for the parks, for the friendliness, for all the events. There's a real strong message that comes through with that video that I think may be a good lead-in to the meeting itself, either before or as part of the meeting itself. So I'm going to run through that and then actually go through the different slides that we have for the PowerPoint presentation, have you vote on those as part of that process, which we have them do tomorrow night too. We'll be comparing the votes tomorrow night with the votes we've gotten online to date, and see what people, how they respond to that. Again, kind of explaining to people that the votes that we have tomorrow night and the input we get tomorrow night, again, is one source. It's not going to override what we've heard before. It's just an additional source. So we're taking as many sources of information as we can and trying to combine those into a good vision for what we're looking forward to for the plan. The principles seem to be a good start on that in terms of what the different categories are, what the vision will be for the plan itself. So, again, get your sense of if that's working.
One thing I just want to interject, and maybe we've told you, I'm not sure, but the City of Boulder is recently taken on Mind Mixer, I think maybe to update their comprehensive plan, and they came up with a unique title. It's called Inspire Boulder. It's kind of interesting. You might visit their website. I think they went live in August.
August 15th. We're very flattered, actually. By the
Dennis, could you move the mic closer to you?
Okay.
I'm surprised they didn't call it Inspire Boulder where we're not going to allow smoking.
Can we get the music with it?
There we go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mayor Debbie Brinkman. Tell us what you love about Littleton.
I love Littleton because it's a small town, the people are friendly, we have wonderful neighbors.
I love Littleton because it's a safe place to live. I love Littleton because all the students and the teachers for the Littleton public schools are really nice.
I like Littleton because of the South Platte River Trail.
I love Littleton because of the houses and the good people.
I love Littleton because it is a small town, and we've lived in Littleton for about 48 years.
I like Littleton because of the libraries.
I love Littleton because I grew up here and it's always been a community to me. It's a place to come home to.
I love Littleton because of all the great schools.
I mean, this is a great hometown. This is where they show up and say hi. And you get to ride on the rides and get all wet and have a good time.
I love Littleton because the schools are awesome.
We love Littleton because
all the playgrounds for the kids and all kinds of fun family things for us to do.
True.
because of the library and the great schools and great teachers that Littleton has.
I love Littleton because there's a lot to do here. They make sure the community works together with everybody.
I like Littleton because of the schools.
I love Littleton because of the library. I would use the library all the time.
I like Littleton because of the parks.
You know, I really like Littleton because it's just a wonderful community.
Littleton is really pretty, and there's always people with smiles walking around.
I love Littleton because I've lived here for 34 years now in the same house. We have lots of friends, and we love our community.
I love Littleton because there's so much fun.
We love Littleton because of the activities and the fun things to do and all the nice people.
I love Littleton because it has a small town atmosphere. I love the parks. I love the trails.
All the people here are really friendly.
I love Littleton because it's close enough to downtown and far enough away.
I love Littleton because the schools are very good.
I like Littleton because the businesses are ethically oriented and they give lots of focus on the human side.
I love Littleton because we have a ton of recreational activities we can do.
I love Littleton because of the school teachers. They work with the parents and have a really good program for special ed.
I love Littleton because everyone's really nice and caring.
I love Littleton for all the nightlife choices they have, like the Tavern, Merle's, all these new bars and places. It's a lot of fun.
I like Littleton because of school. I love Littleton because all the great people that go Littleton.
A lot of reasons why I love Littleton. Easy access to bike routes and stuff. I ride my bike to work.
I love Littleton because of Western Welcome Week and the pretty fireworks that I get to see every year.
I like Littleton because of the recreation and pools.
I love Littleton because of the great transportation and the great schools.
I love Littleton because of all the great food and people. I love Littleton because of all the great nonprofit organizations.
I love Littleton because of the amazing playgrounds. I love Littleton because we can all come together as a community.
Constitute ex parte contact or try to influence the decision makers. Like cute kids, some of my cute kids that you're not responsible for.
David, when you have 4 of them, you just let them run, and they wind up on top.
I'm learning that with grandchildren.
And so long as it's not your honor, life is good.
Okay. Dave, if we can switch over here.
So Dennis, 6:30 tomorrow night?
6:30 tomorrow night.
Okay. Do you want us to be here early, or is it?
I don't think so. I think you can be here a little early, just so you make sure you're here, and if there's anything that comes up. But I think we're in pretty good shape. We're just going to primarily do this. We will have, as Glenn said, we have things set up in the other room so we can have conversations. So I think if you're here and are available for that conversation, I think that'd be great. Standing by some of the maps, we're going to have the map up and having people have an opportunity to put sticky notes up again in terms of what their ideas are. We'll try and be signing people up for Inspire Littleton, and so we're going to go through all that as well. So it'll be a combination of things. But yeah, if you could be here, it'd be fantastic. You've always been a great resource for all of us on all this, so it'd be good.
Will it be televised?
It will not be televised. It will be recorded, but it will not be televised. We're going to record it just so we make sure we get all the comments.
Is it formal? Are we sitting here and here?
We are in here. You'd have to be up in front for tomorrow night. So you should be in the audience tomorrow night. So just listening out there would be great, and then I think that'll be a little less intimidating for them if participate more would be good. So I'll run through the agenda first, and then also go through the program itself and get your feedback on that and see if we're on the right track here. So hopefully, I think we've done a pretty good job of kind of pulling together information because there's an awful lot out there, an awful lot of comments, an awful lot of ideas, and great ones. And I think we may have some frustration tomorrow night. They're not going to see all of their ideas. So we just need to reassure them that when we get to the final product, we will have that online. We'll have it available for everybody to see, and we're trying to pull the essence of all those ideas out. But there's some great individual ideas for projects that are much more specific than the level we're going to with this plan. It's something we need to keep track of and make sure that we're following along because some real inspirations. A lot of people put a lot of thought into this, and it's been very helpful. So we're going to start with some introductions and a welcome to everybody and talk a little bit about what Inspire Littleton is, that it's updating Littleton's comprehensive plan, that we've had outreach events, we've had planning forums, and that we have the inspirelittleton.org website and what we've been doing with that and the kind of response we've been getting. And then the question is, do we then show the video, or do we show the video before as people are coming in? Before we go into the program itself. So let's go through this and we get your feedback afterwards, I think, because it's a fairly lengthy program as it is. So we're going to start off with seeing what their answers are to questions. These are the same questions that we had on the website. These are the ones where we could actually answer yes or no, and so there are our poll questions. And then we'll compare what we get answers for tomorrow night to what we got online, and I think that's kind of intriguing. Then we're going to get their ideas on the principles themselves that we took you through at the last meeting, and basically a kind of synopsis of what we've heard to date. Then we wanted to open up for discussion, ask people what their priorities are, what we've missed, what they think we need to be covering. And Glenn and I are going through and coming up with things that we think we haven't heard yet that we think are maybe integral to some of the discussion, but haven't been cited specifically. And so we're thinking about those things as well. There may be some other ideas that we'll have to run by you, run by the public as we go forward, but that we think may be critical to have in this larger discussion too. So it may be something you can be thinking of as well, and we'll ask for other people to think of too. And then just what comes next, the draft plan, and then the review of the plan, the revisions, and adoption of the plan early next year. So your take on questions, you all have little voting pads out in front of you, so you get an opportunity to vote tonight. Make sure that you're turning the right way, so you get 1 where 1 should be and 9 where 9 should be. You get 2. Glenn gets 2 too. It's a good deal.
It's the only perk of the job. That's right, too.
Should have brought your son.
You may cancel yourself out, though.
That's true.
I've been known to do that.
First question. Parking downtown is readily available and adequate. Agree or disagree? 1 is agree and 2 is disagree. When you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. We're down to 10, 9. Some of these will take some time. Some of these are pretty fast.
I think you ought to shorten the time.
I can shorten the time with that one. I can go click that one right there. So 91% of you said you agree that parking downtown is available. Someone in here thinks there's a problem.
Someone wants to quibble over time, location, and purpose.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Agree. This is online. 80% agree, think that it's adequate downtown. 20% disagree, find parking downtown to be inadequate. And we've combined these questions. If you remember the question online, it was actually more complex than that. It actually had a few more parameters, but I think for purposes of this, it's easier just to consolidate a little bit. Next question. Should the city take an active role in helping downtown businesses capture more of the ACC market? 1 is yes, and 2 is no. When I get all your responses, we'll click. Oops, sorry. Cancel that. We'll click down here. Oops, backwards. Hang on a sec. There we go. 73% said yes, and 27% said no. Okay, good. Fairly close to what we heard online. 72% and 18%. Yes and no.
Hard to answer on that one, and maybe, like, what would that mean? Like, what does that
Right.
really mean?
I think that's going to be true for a lot of them, and we've heard that online too. We've gotten some real good response from some of the folks saying, this is really more site-specific. This is really, it depends on the individual situation. What are you proposing? So it's really a very general question that we hope then to get into more detail later, but just kind of generally, is it a good idea or not? Yeah.
But as you're presenting that question, can you give some examples of how cities do get involved, and just to, again, help them understand what it may or may not. It doesn't mean that's exactly what we will do, but these are some types of things that other cities do or cities can do.
Won't that skew your answers, though, potentially? Different from what you've gotten online, and will that make any sense? Because you're not doing that online. Are you giving them ideas online?
No, we don't give them ideas. We give them a little background. There's a little statement underneath where you give a little background, sometimes explaining things. In this case, I don't think we did specific programs that could be used.
But it also might give you an opportunity to say, if we had more information, we're going to get a different answer.
Imagine if it went completely the other way. So,
yeah. So it might be good to give them that information and say that potentially we could end up with a totally different answer if we gave them more information of what it looks like.
I think, if I understand what you're asking, rather than skew it towards an opinion, just say there's a demographic population of 18 to 24-year-olds. I'm going to make up a number, 6,000 people from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. show up in our neighborhood. Would that be a market that would be interested to tackle more without leading it to a yes or no? I don't like how I just said that, but something that describes what it is without leading it to an end result.
Because it isn't precedent. It's 18,000 individuals, if you include students and staff. And you may not be able to get the students, but you certainly might be able to get the staff. More involved downtown students tend to have limited incomes, and their time frame is very different, I think. But
I think
certainly
it's less about the who but more about, because you can apply this question to anything, it's not just ACC. So it's more of an understanding of what can a city do? What are they allowed to do, or...
Track businesses, create
Yeah,
recreation.
So I don't know that it's, I mean, in this question it's specific to ACC, but I think the lack of understanding is more of an understanding of what can or what is a city allowed to do on fronts like this, just generally speaking. Not necessarily, again, and that's why I said, what do other cities, for example, here's what other cities do, or, that's how I was looking
Or
at
even
it.
some examples. It's a good question, because I think it's an ongoing issue for a lot of cities. I think certainly Aurelia had that issue with downtown. How connected are they, and how connected are those students? And the answer is generally not very. And I think the same is true with Boulder and Fort Collins, most places. It's sometimes a very different market, but yeah, maybe more, maybe even Greeley. I don't know. But I suppose the smaller schools maybe are more involved with downtown.
Actually, those are three good examples, because the situation between the CU campus and the city of Boulder and Aurelia and the downtown and ACC and Littleton are very different.
Yeah.
You cannot draw any conclusions from any poll taken at any one of those about the other two. You can't. I think that's one of the problems we're saddled with, is we've been asking simple questions about complex issues without explaining the complexity. And it's, Kurt's right. You can't go back and rephrase the question if you're comparing current responses at the forum to what we've been collecting for the last 4 months on the webpage. We just have to live with the oversimplification.
Well, Dennis, were these categorized on the website in terms of, like, this is obviously an economic development question, and in any other context, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, how do you capture the ACC market in terms of land
It's not
use?
obvious to the
We already
participants
have
that
it.
they are categorized, but not to the participants. Yeah, the participants wouldn't know that.
And sometimes we got responses to a question raised under one topic over under a different topic.
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of crossover.
Or, one answer would have 2 or 3 different topic areas that they were actually getting interested in. Yeah, it's true. So
It's probably unfair to ask at this stage, but why is the ACC question batting second in your presentation? Just given from this short experience, obviously it takes us on a path.
Yeah, it's fast,
Is
and it
this
can
the
steal
end
a
result
second.
we're looking for of how do we cater to ACC?
They're still going to lose 9 straight.
Or should that be saddled later in the batting order?
That's a
to
great question.
get to the meat questions.
Yeah.
One's a softball, two's an easy slider, and three's a curveball to get the conversation going. And then by the time you get to 6 or 7, not to demean this question because I think it's very important, but what really is the end result we're looking for from that meeting to facilitate discussion?
Especially given the feedback we got from the ACC administration and student advisory group about the potential for involving students with the downtown 2 years ago.
Negative.
It's just the wrong kind of students. They come for their classes, they go back to work. These aren't kids that tend to live at home and they're just going to school right out of high school. These are people who are working of all ages, and they tend to come in and leave.
Is there a comparable study to ACC to say, hey, students, what would it take for you to get to spend 10 extra minutes in Littleton? Would a hot dog stand, would a coffee shop, would a
we've been
internet
working
cafe?
with the marketing department at ACC about how do we get more students involved, and if we were to have more students at some point, which we haven't had, I think we would start tailoring questions to them at that point. And they've been real good about putting up posters for us, and they've been working on getting us a table so we could actually get more ACC students involved. And we may actually come up, it's a good idea, maybe actually have a specific poll for them at that point and really ask them specific questions above and beyond what we've asked otherwise, so.
They seem like a specific demographic population, and not that I want this to happen, but you could ask the same question of, hey, people who live in Northwest Littleton, what do you think? Hey, people who live in Southeast Littleton.
Or all county employees.
And it's the
sure,
answer relative to the 10 blocks that I live in more than a comprehensive look at what we're trying to get done.
The other thing I heard you say, I think earlier, was it might be better to start from general, the general kind of broader questions and go to the more specific, which I think is a great idea. So
lead the discussion to where you want it to go.
Okay, yeah.
Without skewing the discussion to a specific outcome.
Okay. Yeah, this is more the order in which they appeared, online. So we were just kind of following that order.
But if we really want to pursue this, the specific demographic you're talking about is 19 to 59.
Yeah, that's right.
And the specific demographic you're talking about are people who live in the surrounding neighborhoods, or they come in on light rail, or they, so we need to target specifics.
Narrow.
Yeah, you need to decide, okay, what different characteristics are going to make a difference in how they're interested in activities or retail or whatever downtown, and then target those.
To that, do we have the ability to sort the data by, certainly we have it to sort by age, but age with kids, age without kids? And to the point, there's a big difference between a 30-year-old with 2 kids and a 30-year-old with no kids.
No, we don't
They
have that
distinctly
information.
different views of the world.
They can generalize that for us. MindMixer can generalize that for us with information that they have above and beyond what we have access to. But I don't know how accurate that would be. So it's a good question.
Again, for better or worse, we set out to get an overview from maybe not Julio's classic 30,000 feet, but at least from 10 or 15,000. It's a little late now to say we really ought to be able to dig down, because we can't.
Well, and this question, it's interesting because we didn't get, when you look at all the responses we got, all the ideas that we got online at the meetings, we didn't hear that much about downtown. We didn't hear that much about ACC. So this is probably not the focus that we should be looking at this point.
What we heard was people were tired of hearing about just downtown.
Yeah. So, we were trying to lead the conversation a little bit with this, but didn't get a lot of response and didn't get much beyond this. So, interesting.
So not to belabor this one, but what we talked about at least now was how, the intent was how do we leverage ACC, that population or that demographic to essentially spend more money in downtown Littleton, right? So we talked about economic development. But I think it could potentially go beyond that. Is it maybe access to more internship programs or engagement in the community? It's not just about purchasing within the community, so it's making them, I think our goal would be also to just increase their involvement in the community in other ways.
And you're going at the kind of level, you're talking about the level that we're at, the 15,000-foot level or wherever we are. At this point, we would just identify that probably at this level and say this is something we need to be looking at, that this is an opportunity for the community to work more as a whole, and this is maybe a large sector of the community that's not as involved in the community as a whole as it might be. It's a tremendous resource. How do we use this for training? And certainly some of that's going on, but it's really an outcome of the plan in terms of this is something we want to look at probably rather than something we need to look at in great detail here. So, but good point. Next question, where would you like to see new housing? And this is the map that we used when we were first signing in. These are different intersections. And we picked intersections because they were general areas of the city. And so we don't talk about particular types of housing, we don't talk about anything else, but you get to vote on where you would like to see new housing.
Is none of the above a possibility?
None of the above is a possibility.
Is none of the above?
It's not. It's a good question. That's a good point. Yeah, it's not. We didn't do that. It should be probably. So. We can add 11.
There's no 11 on the...
There's only 10.
Or just don't vote. I know that. Yeah, I guess if you don't vote, then. Actually, I think 10 is our limit. Come to think of it, I don't think we can do 11 on this one. So, okay, we voted. Let's see where we are.
Andrew, you could push 9 plus 2. That would get you to 11.
Okay.
I'm abstaining my vote.
So number 3 came out as our winner, which is Maine and Prince. And our second winner is number 8, which is Mineral and Santa Fe. And then we have a few more down below, and there's none of the above. It comes down to those. So, okay. And this is where you kind of compare
Get 1%.
Maine and Prince.
Oh, that was the online stuff. Okay.
Yeah, this is the online. And this is what the online looks like in a graph. So number 3, which is again, you can see the little map down there is Main and Prince.
Noting that it's hard for 10 people to build up any kind of...
Right, exactly, absolutely. And I think that's the caveat in all this, that despite the fact that we have all these participants and all these comments and ideas on individual topics, they may be fairly small numbers. But again, I think when we talk to the people tomorrow night, they're going to feel like their answers are important, and I think it's just value these as well, that despite the fact it's a very small sample, still at least it is a sample. So
this little map here has 1 through 9, with the one we saw.
Oh, I need to switch that. Oh, thank you.
Missing?
Wrong map. Thank you. I just put that in. It's the wrong map. It's the old one.
It's a tough one. In fact, we struggled with it today, thinking, I mean, a lot of those places, there physically isn't a place for new housing. I mean, Prince and Ridge, I'm not sure where we would put new
There's
housing.
that open lot.
Four houses.
Yes, four
Coming
houses.
soon.
One high-rise, one small high-rise.
Well, and Glenn, that leads to the none of the above. That, is it dense enough?
Yeah.
Or do we need more? Question here, this reminds me of the commercial of I don't know who it is, but which is a shame for the marketing people, but there's a commercial that runs during the football games of, here's a color graph, and here's a black and white graph, and it tells you, and here's a number graph. And just the flow you just gave sort of reminds me of how many different looks can we see the same information.
Okay.
And with the intent of trying to keep it relevant and spontaneous instead of, oh, look, you know how to use PowerPoint.
Right, okay.
We
were going to get rid of this one, I think, and substitute this one.
Yeah.
Once we get color on it.
With the
get
key,
the right map.
only note would be add a key to this, because I forgot what 1 through 10
Okay,
was.
good, yeah. Well, that's why I was putting the map in.
The
map is correct down here.
We'll have to
Move it up so you
Yeah,
see
we
it.
just did that this afternoon late, so sorry about that.
So what do you infer with this?
That, I think there is an interest in more housing downtown. Now, we haven't talked about the type of housing. We had a question online about that, but it's very complex, I think, for people to get into what's appropriate for housing in any one location. So we're going to have to, I think, do that later. I think that's a follow-up. But it does say that people have an interest in living downtown. Or think that other people would have an interest in living downtown. And they also think there's potential for people to live at Mineral and Santa Fe. So there's areas around town where people think maybe it's appropriate or maybe they could handle more housing. So it doesn't tell us a lot.
And so I think once you get this answer, I think it's worth asking the audience, like, why did you guys pick this or that?
Good.
Just to, so we can get the different reasons.
Okay.
Because just like you just stated, people want to live there. I looked at it from an economic development perspective and said, I want people living where there's stores, so then they're shopping in those stores. So, that's kind of how, at least I would infer 3 and 8 come up, because 8's next to Aspen Grove, I think, and 3 is next to downtown.
Or 3 and 8 are both next to light rail stations, and people are saying,
Yeah.
well, that's where I have housing. If you're going to go to the trouble of having light rail. So I guess that raises the question, and I should know the answer to this, Dennis, but is there a housing component in the PD for the insert property, southwest corner
Yes,
of Mineral?
certainly is. Huge.
So then,
Okay.
so you could infer either or.
Exactly.
Right. As well as Littleton Village has a huge housing component as well. That one has 900 units. The number of units in the insert property, the PD there, not determined, but it's a large component, so definitely.
You might mention that there's 2 housing developments approved but unbuilt as of yet, right across the street, and just east of McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. With
I think those are the only 2 that
downtown
haven't started yet.
Yeah, they sure are, absolutely.
And of course, those
between them,
intersections.
probably, what, 80 units, I think?
Those numbered locations may be bigger than just, right there around that. I mean,
They
it
are.
could go as far as the sheriff's property.
So that's interesting.
Or 3.
Are we skewing the results again by just, I think that the locations that we're picking here are just locations that are zoned for housing?
No, actually, they're not. It's a good question. We were just trying to find areas that, intersections that picked up areas of the city, and you could kind of identify that as being distinct from another area. So we thought if you pick 6, you might be able to say, I live closer to 6 than I do to 5. Definitely closer than I do to 4, or identify with it. So it was more an identification.
But for example, the the EchoStar property that's right across from Santa Fe, there on the corner of Santa Fe and Bowles, that would probably be one that would end up ranking high if we put it on the map. Is it not on the map?
It's not on the map. You'd end up probably saying that it was close to 3, what I would think. You would probably say.
I'd love to see somebody propose that to Charlie Ergen. Sure.
Yes.
To that point, is your question about you think there should be residential development there, or you think there should be some development there?
There probably should be some development. It's an empty slate. But I think here, again, if we're asking the question, where would you put new housing, how are we choosing what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is?
Well, is the question housing, or is the question
That was the
development?
question.
This was just housing.
New housing.
Just housing at this point.
Where would you like to see new housing?
So, but if I'm hearing you correctly, is the question better oriented to be development, meaning something should be there?
It's a different
as opposed
It's a different question. I think that's a different question.
We didn't ask it online, unfortunately, and so we didn't have anything to compare it to. But certainly it might be a worthwhile question to ask, I think, online and in other
I think
forums
that's
as well.
different. Yeah, that is a different question.
Yeah.
I don't think it's I don't think people break it down that detailed. I think they think in terms of, okay, what areas of the city am I familiar with, and what is it in that area that I would like to be close to, and it could be shopping, it could be light rail, it could be both. The fact that you have light rail and shopping in one place, therefore, those areas come up at a high priority right off the top of someone's head.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that we've heard over the years is, and David, I guess, heard this a lot too, that we've had a lot of people saying they were interested in housing types that we don't have. I would like to have a housing type that I could, a patio home or something. But I want that in my neighborhood, probably. I want it as close as possible. I don't want to have to go across, Santa Fe to
new in terms of replacement. New in terms of replacement of what's there, not necessarily new because it's a
big they're looking for alternatives, but they're looking for them probably close to number 6 or number 9 or wherever they are. So that was part of the argument too. Is where do you want to see something else? And it's just in terms of interest.
They also wanted at a price point that they can afford.
That's right, and that's the real
Which of
challenge.
course is the same for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Corey, the question we've been thinking what we're going to do is go all the way through this presentation and then ask for questions at the end. So we're going to kind of warn them up front to kind of keep track of their questions, and we can go back to individual slides and questions. The thought there are a lot of slides, so we're not going to get through it otherwise. So I want everybody's kind of feedback on that too, if that's a good way to go, because you lose some of it if you don't have it immediately. But I don't think we get through the whole thing otherwise, too.
Build the momentum going through the questions and then back up and say, does anybody have something they want to say about the question? Did not give you enough information? Did we not give you enough opportunities? What would you like to say about your selection or the framing of the question?
You might start out by alerting people to pay attention to what questions they may want to come back to.
Right.
I think so, too.
So maybe we should practice that now.
Okay. Good.
Way to go, Chair.
All right.
Great idea.
All right. I want you to hold your questions. Don't mind. Keep track of your questions. You write something down. Okay, so highlight them, whatever you need to do. So, okay. We'll go from there. Okay. Next question. And these aren't numbered. I think we probably should number them, too, just so people can kind of in their mind know where they are and know what question to go back to. Okay, question. Should the city take an active role in attracting new employers to Littleton? Yes or no? Polling is open. I have 11 responses already. All right. 91% say yes, and 9% say no. Okay, good.
Not me this time.
It compares to 87% to 13, so we're pretty
Represent the
close.
choice,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think so too. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if we are tomorrow night too. It'd be interesting to see. I think so. Question: should the city take an active role in attracting specific retailers to Littleton? Yes or no? The ones we have up there were 3 that were mentioned online specifically. So we've got 7 responses. 8, 9, 10. One more. Okay, great. Thank you.
There's Walmart. It's not up there.
I didn't put it up there. That'd be the end of the meeting.
We went too fast. Back up.
Yes, 87%, and no, 13%.
So it's potential.
This question or the last question?
What was our...
Your response was, was 73 to 27, and theirs was, a little different. Yeah, they were more on the yes side than you guys were. So you were, again, here.
I know this isn't scientific, but potentially somebody who comes tomorrow will have already voted online, and they're voting again tomorrow night.
Absolutely.
So.
You bet. And we're going to have some of those definitely, because we've been making quite an effort to get some of those folks here tomorrow night to get their take on what we've been doing with the information they've been giving us, and just to get them involved at this point. So, because we've got some great folks out there, so hopefully we'll have some of those. And that, you're right, that's going to be an issue. So we will have that.
As long as we don't vote on prairie dogs, we'll be okay.
I don't think prairie dogs is coming. Hopefully.
Dennis, is the intent to validate the statistics that we have online to just say, hey, you all are voting the same way? Or is it to garner new information, new ideas, or is it to gather comments on those?
A combination of the two, but it's more garner new ideas. It's the thought is this is yet another forum. What we hear tomorrow night does not override what we've heard online. It just adds to that information that we've had.
It validates, based on this, the consensus opinion. This is generally how people are seeing this.
Yeah, I think that we found.
By the way, what's your idea?
Right.
In that case, that's a good point. In that case, that makes it more important that we get through the polling as quickly as possible, just to show them how they compare to the website overall, and then get to the gist of it, to the guts. You know, what was your motivation in voting for this? Why did you see it that? Did you not understand the background of the question, but get the new information instead of just worrying about how they compare?
Yeah, I mean, this really, way back when we talked about how do we use different research methodologies. And so a lot of what you're getting online is more of that quantitative, like how many people are voting for the same thing. And when you have that open forum is where you really can start asking the questions that become more of that qualitative, was what was, so tell me a little bit more of why you voted yes, and what was it about it, and that's where you can go deeper. Okay. So to Dave's point, I think the importance is that we actually do spend the time discussing, and because again, as you could see, I'm sure you'll get the same results tomorrow. It'll validate what you have, so I think let's move on with validating what we've heard already, and then just getting deeper into them.
And if people find out that they voted pretty much the way other people have in the past, that tends to reassure them that they should go ahead and say why.
Yeah.
Instead of hanging back saying, well, gee, why was I so at odds with somebody else?
You're right.
Yeah, even if you're the 13%, I think it's good to know that. Yeah, and so you still have,
On the other hand, if we get results tomorrow night that are at odds with what we've got in the past,
be interesting.
Worth exploring and find out, why, what was behind this.
Exactly. Next one, does the City of Littleton provide enough activities for youth and children? 1's yes, 2 is no.
What's youth, under the age of 18?
Yeah, pretty much.
Or 60 or...
Yeah, and children's younger. So. 73% yes, 27% said no. Line we said 66 to 34. So again, it's 73, 66. Is it important to identify and protect Littleton's historic structures and places? 1 is yes, 2 is no, and 3 is I'm neutral, which is kind of Andrew's none of the above, I think. So.
I don't even recognize that structure on the bottom left. Where's that?
You don't think I'm neutral? You think get rid of I'm
That's
neutral?
the landing.
We did actually have
Down at the mobile homes down at the northwest corner of C-470 in Santa Fe. It's the original landing. The actual landing is Warhurst.
Can you access that? Is that publicly accessible?
Everybody okay if I remove I'm neutral from all the questions? We only have it in here on a couple, I think. So.
I think it should stay.
You like I'm neutral? Okay.
It's a cop-out.
No, it's not.
It says I'm not willing to take an affirmative or negative position.
No, it says, I'm happy that they're here, but I'm not going to start a street riot if somebody wants to change it or take it out.
Case-by-case basis.
Oh.
No.
Yes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Is it important to identify?
Do we want it or don't we?
It was in the online question. It was in the online question.
Yeah,
That's why you keep it in.
Yep.
I just think it's important to keep the consistent questions.
I think it just comes back to we really want to stimulate conversation and get to the depths of some things. And when you do neutral, then you don't.
I guess we can ask them why they're neutral.
Oh, look.
It's moved.
Anyway. There you go.
How can we convince you to have an opinion?
Keep that in mind for the next 44 days.
That's right. 5% who are neutral.
Or
Is it
neutralized.
important to promote high-quality architecture, landscape architecture, and urban design in both the public and private realms? Glenn and I thought we'd simplified this, and I can't find a simplified version. If you have one you can remember, let me know. For the public and private realms, but
Define high quality.
it's open.
Poll 10 people and get 11 different responses.
Subjective, I know.
Define important.
Yeah. Define question.
I would end it after design.
Yeah, me too.
Private
Yeah,
realms.
yeah.
Okay. Good.
I agree.
Well, I think the question asks, is it important to have a design standard in the city?
Public and private, both?
I'd pull both of those out,
Yeah,
but just a
To have a design standard or a guideline. It's probably a guideline more than it's a standard,
how
right?
do we want it to look?
See, that's the real issue. The issue is not, is it important? Because is it important that we maintain freedom in the United States? Well, yeah. Now define it. That's the argument. Not, is it important?
I need one more vote.
Should there be consistency in design standards throughout the city?
Well, it can be consistently bad.
That sounds like a boring city to me.
Or diversity, or complexity, or some...
So everybody, speaking of, everybody know where this building is down at the bottom, the third?
Yep.
That's the,
Okay.
what's that?
What is that?
Just north of Littleton Boulevard.
Yeah.
What is that? What is
Great
that?
little building.
By Wells Fargo.
What is that, Dennis?
It's a wonderful little building. It's I can't remember, is it the Colorado?
The Heart something.
Oh, yeah, I think that's right. It's something
Where is it?
it's just north of Colorado on Acoma.
Near Wells Fargo, Arby's.
It's just behind Wells Fargo.
Some flaws.
On Acoma.
North of Colorado's
The
Littleton?
great
North
little-
of Colorado is
It's
Littleton?
I'm sorry?
Is it in Littleton? North
In
of
Littleton, yeah.
North of Colorado is
Or
Littleton?
north of Littleton Boulevard on Acoma, sorry.
Wells Fargo.
North of
West
Littleton
of Wells Fargo.
Boulevard
Yeah,
on
just
Coal Mine.
on the same property as Wells Fargo, basically.
Yeah,
Same
Wells
block.
Fargo drive-through. It's west of
Yeah,
Wells
right,
Fargo drive-through.
exactly, yeah.
You come up Tacoma and you
Back behind the Arby's.
drive through.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Back behind the Arby's.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a terrible point of reference.
I need one more vote. Who didn't vote? Okay, somebody didn't vote. Okay, 70-30. It's not. 30% of you say no. Okay. We got
I didn't
80-20 online, so.
Is it important to have a planning commission?
We get to vote on that?
The rubber stamp of the community?
Obviously not, because we're poor.
Should the city actively pursue the redevelopment of our outdated and underperforming shopping centers? 1 is yes and 2 is no.
Can't vote more than once.
Actively pursue.
He's down there. He's got an extra.
Good vote I get.
90% said yes.
90 did.
Opposed to 94-6, very close.
Shut up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should neighborhoods that are near outdated or vacant retail property be willing to accommodate additional density and/or height as a trade-off for seeing that the properties be updated, more active, and attractive? You can see that it was obvious we had a very sophisticated group online and started asking more complex questions. So,
A long question.
Give us a couple of extra minutes here.
And that really came out of about 3 different topics that were scattered throughout the website. So it's an attempt to amalgamate some very long-winded questions from several locations into 4 lines.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be more appropriate to ask the question, would you be, if you lived in an adjacent neighborhood, would you be willing
I think
to?
that's the follow-up question, exactly. Glenn, I've talked about that. Yeah, sure, it's fine over there.
Could phrase it that way, because it really is intended to you, right? So it's easy to say, well, as long as it's not my neighborhood, right? But if you ask
How
the
about,
question...
since we asked this online, how about if we ask that as a follow-up question tomorrow? So,
Well, to
Oh,
that,
yeah, that'd be funny. That'd be good. That'd be
Basis of a
interesting.
NIMBY argument here.
Yeah.
well, to that end, I'd love to see this exact
For me.
same question asked to a group of retail developers or real estate guys, you know, that are, this is their core business.
the answer would be definitely no if it's next to their house. I've had that experience. So, yeah.
Well, and to pull the guy who, you know, to me, the layman who just wants nice stuff by my house, compared to the guy who's trying to make a buck off of it, he's going to have a far more aggressive answer than I am. I just say, let it look nice, and they say, but I want to make money in this deal. So I think we have to cater to the audience that we're speaking to.
And then the other question is, if you're going to talk about encouraging, incentivizing, updating or whatever retail properties, maybe part of that is you do that, but you find a way of increasing the buffer between those properties and the residential properties instead of making the residents pay the price for a benefit that's going to go to the property owner, the store owner, and the community as a whole.
Well,
so there are different ways of approaching that.
That's part of the discussion, I think,
Right.
is if you've got a shopping center or a retail property or a residential property or any property that's really run down, close to you, it starts to detract from the value of your property, too. So it's not just to the financial benefit of the developer, the property owner necessarily. It really can be to the benefit of the whole neighborhood.
But if you increase the density and the volume of traffic that are going into that might affect your property values
Absolutely.
as well. So
that's exactly the trade-off, I think. Absolutely.
It depends on what it is, right?
Right.
Then you get into the whole question of welfare and subsidy, incentive, so you're asking me, because I live behind a rundown shopping center that somebody's neglected, to sacrifice my view or the traffic or the density or what's going on there because this guy was too lazy to reinvest in his property, whereas Andrew doesn't have to because the shopping center that he's next to, the guy's been keeping it updated. There's an equity issue at the core of all this.
There's no simple way to approach this. I know, it's true.
Instead of willing to accommodate, willing to negotiate sounds to me a better expression.
I've got some torches at home. Oh, no, that's okay.
And to that, I'm back to the put up or shut up. If you don't own the property and you're making a decent rent, I can think of numerous properties around town that are completely occupied, but don't necessarily have any good luck. But I'm the owner and I'm making the money I need. What incentive do I have to do that? So the neighbor immediately next door has the incentive because they want to look at something prettier or have better stores that are more oriented to their needs, but the building owner says, I don't have to.
Really fine. I don't want more debt.
I think we were really at the heart of this early on, and after this question came up, and that is personalize it. If you're going to say, do you believe that your neighborhood should make this accommodation, that's fine. But to sit there and say, do you think everybody else's neighborhood should do it? No, that's out of bounds.
We'll ask both.
There's a yes, no, and a zero. What's the?
We're going to add. Yeah, we're going to add. We're going to do this one first. It says what we had the answers for online, but then we'll go ahead and ask, would you?
But I'm talking about in terms of comp plan. A comp plan is used as a roadmap to the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so a future land use map would basically have a zone that's colored and says, okay, this area, we as a community have agreed to allow it to go denser.
Mm-hmm.
Then what that does is it gives a guide to the council and to us. If a developer wants to change the zoning, do a PD, he knows that he's allowed to go for it in that area. He still has to satisfy all the guidelines in terms of architectural style and density and buffer and traffic and all those things. But if we as a community agree that an area, say along Littleton, needs to improve to survive at some point, our comp plan says go for it. Bring us a plan that meets all the criteria. That also says to the owner of that property who's making a profit already, a developer comes to them and says, okay, I know you're making a profit, you're making good money, but you're going to make more money and you're going to be able to retire or whatever, but I'm going to make your property even better if I buy it. And the community is going to benefit through added amenities, added shopping, updated architecture, all that stuff. And then that begins to become a catalyst to adjacent properties in the same zone to say, hey, look, he did it. Now we're going to do it. That's how I see a comp plan works. And if the community says we're willing to try that, then that's a guide to us that says, okay, let's look on our map of the city and say, where can we do that?
Absolutely, and I think that's why we've got such kind of general, frustrating questions in some ways, because, yes, there are all kinds of details that have to be...
There's a lot of details that we talk about later.
Right, but at this point, we need direction, Planning Commission, staff needs direction, and applicants need direction, property owners need some direction. Is the city open to this at all? Or do we just, bag it and go home?
Right.
So, yeah, absolutely. That's what the comp plan should be giving you. I agree. So that's kind of why we're at this level, unfortunately, as frustrating as it is. But.
Dennis, I would suggest switching this question with the one previous about design standards.
Okay.
And specifically just the way this conversation ran.
Okay.
I don't know if it was a seed and then a growth or the opposite, but I think this says, should we accommodate additional attractiveness? And the other says, should there be a standard?
Okay.
And I think they kind of logically flow from one to the other.
Okay, good. Super. So you were 70-30, they were 88-12. Next one is, what land uses should replace outdated, underperforming, or vacant retail? Now, these aren't all the options, of course, but we gave you a few. So housing, retail, office, residential/retail mixed use, office/retail mixed use, or something else.
So it's almost like number 6 should be all of the above. Unless you're talking about a specific property, it's hard to say what should be there.
Well, I think it can include parks, which I didn't put on there, because it's not realistic. Even though typically it's hard to come up with a site where you're going to do a park for vacant retail, even though that may be everybody's desire. So I was trying not to lead people down that path. So, but it's parks, it's industrial, it's schools. What else might it be? But so I don't know. But so you think it's all the above? I'm sorry, Glenn. Go ahead.
We're going
I don't know how to answer
change this to a top 3, perhaps, to give people 3, or that won't
We can.
jive with what we got from online.
It won't jive, but we could certainly do it. So we could do it as a second.
There's so many variables in this one.
I'm having trouble answering this one.
Yeah,
I just say mixed use.
to say retail is to essentially say you don't think any land use, you should replace it. It should stay the way it is.
Right.
Otherwise, your options are housing or office or a mix. And if that's all we give them is housing, office, retail, and mixed.
Of all those.
But again, what we got online was people making comments too that you really need to those specifics of the situation. So, but in terms of general answers, this is. Oh, you guys haven't done it yet. Sorry, this is what you guys gave. 50% said residential retail mixed. 25% said retail, and online they said 83% residential retail mixed. And 17% said other.
Oh.
So could have been just a confusion over the whole thing. So, although we didn't get comments. I'm sorry.
Tire recycling, perhaps, could be another.
Could be a tire recycling. That's right. Exactly.
What were our results on that?
Recycler,
Dennis, what were our results on that? Same thing on the residential. Majority was on residential and retail mixed.
Yeah, you were 50% mixed use, residential retail mixed use. Then you were 25% on retail, and 13% each on office/retail mixed and other, which was, I guess, the tire recycling place.
With 10 people voting, how did we get 25%? 2.5? Okay.
I think you only have 8 responses. I think I clicked early. I apologize.
I didn't get to vote.
Okay.
Oh, Glenn didn't get to it. Do we want to redo it?
What was the website?
I'm sorry?
What were the website results?
Oh, the website results were 83% on residential/retail mixed, and again, 70% other. And again, our numbers are small. Our numbers in some cases aren't much larger than your numbers. In some cases, they're fairly sizable, so it just depends on the question.
They don't see this as an office community.
No, they don't. I think they realize there's not much of an office market,
myopic.
probably, yeah.
That's myopic.
Question, do you think that the new buildings recently built in downtown Golden would be appropriate in Littleton? And the question is, we had some explanation. Well, we had some people online said what they would like to do is, when I asked them, what questions have we not asked that you'd like to see, they said we'd like to see some case studies almost, So the question was, go out and look at Littleton, take a drive. And we had people who did. People said, I just had breakfast in Littleton, or in Golden, excuse me, and it was wonderful. Here's what I walked up the creek, and here's what I saw. So we are getting people going out and kind of looking around and seeing what's there. But it's mixed use. It's off the main street.
It's 4 stories or more.
It's 4 more, yeah, that's the max, I think, 4 or 5.
And it's modern design for the
Have
most
some
part.
5-story condos down.
So we need the yes and no.
Yeah, okay.
1, 2, yes, no.
I'm sorry?
The yes and no aren't on there.
Oh, you're right, they're underneath there, I'm
So
sorry.
it's 2 for no, right? 1 for yes?
1 for yes and 2 for no.
Go to the next slide.
If I go to the next slide, we'll see it. There we go, that's why. I'm sorry, thank you, that was why. Because
Not sure. There's
we were
no
trying to show
cop-out.
photos. We had a couple of those, we were trying to show some photos, so a few examples there. Yes, no, or not sure. We changed it to anywhere in Littleton. Do you think it would work someplace? Okay, we've got 10 responses. 70% said yes, 30% said no. At least you all have an opinion. That's good. So, and 60 is very close. 63%, 31%, and 5.
I worry on that question, do you get into a debate about what's great about Golden, which could be a very productive
Actually
discussion.
good, yeah.
But does it take us down a wormhole of, let's talk about Golden instead of let's talk about Littleton?
As long as nobody interprets those results to say, the majority think we ought to put those 5-story buildings in downtown Littleton, which is presuming too much.
I think
That'd
we
be
should
fine.
put a massive major brewery in downtown.
Well, that's different. That's different.
Okay.
About economic.
Use the Platte River Brewery.
There we go. Platte River Water, too.
Platte River Water.
The Ranke Brothers Ghost Story Brewery.
Sky Blue Waters, right?
Are we done with the clickers?
No, you get to vote some more. You're not done yet, sorry. So here's what we've heard. We've heard these things. We had heard about a dynamic Littleton with land use policies to shape the future, and we've heard all these specific programs as well as more, but a lot of things that kind of led us in this direction. So these are kind of general themes that we were hearing, general principles that we will use to build a vision statement for Littleton and also a series of goals. So we tried to kind of categorize them in terms of what we're seeing for direction. So the question is, do you agree?
Agree with what?
You agree that, well, maybe that's a good question. Do you agree that this is a principle that we are looking for a dynamic Littleton where we will shape the future to be dynamic?
Can we add apple pie, motherhood, and Chevrolet at the bottom there, too?
Sure. So you want to maintain and expand upon Littleton's charm. You want to see redevelopment and infill, mixed-use development, transitory development, which we'll explain as being basically close to either light rail or other intense transit of some sort. Sustainability, and that's both economic as well as environmental.
Yeah, unfortunately, most people don't catch the other ramifications or the other considerations in sustainability. They think of green stuff.
Right. So we're going to try and make a point to say it's both.
Are you asking them to agree to all of these things?
Yeah.
No, you don't. I think just in terms of the category itself. Is this a category? Do you want to think of Littleton as being dynamic? In the future.
You need to explain that.
If you're looking at the vision of Littleton, do you want to say, yes, I want Littleton to be dynamic?
In that case,
is that a good way to phrase it?
In that case, it should be spicy apple pie, not just apple pie.
Okay.
What's the alternative?
Yes.
An unwed motherhood.
Well, the question is, do you want to vote on this, or is there a better way to do this? So we went
It's
through.
not a voting, it's a discussing.
1 is yes, 2 is no, and
Good.
3 is yada, yada, yada.
So yeah, let's go through all of them. We'll just talk about discussing it. I think that might be better. Let's do that. A livable Littleton. You've seen all these before.
Maybe if you put the principle that you're trying to talk about up on top, and then say, for example, and have those ideas, that might be something people could respond to a little more, I want to say rationally, easily.
Yeah, I immediately go to the top bullet. I didn't even look at the bottom until.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, it just seems the last 2 slides seem to be you're getting to a point. And right now, to what I think Craig was insinuating earlier, if I can interject with that, we've been voting for a while, now present for a while, and then lead it to discussion, which will take you through the end of the meeting.
Okay.
You want a livable Littleton? Do you want a dynamic Littleton? I don't know what the next
So
one
it's a summary of what we heard.
So here's, yeah, right. Thanks for your
Anyone
votes.
say no,
You
though?
validated what the general consensus is.
Okay.
This is the general themes
Right.
we've come out with in our presentation.
Then go to discussion.
Livable, dynamic.
I think that's a good,
Okay.
Now let's open it up for discussion.
Okay, good. I think this is a good way, too, to say, yes, we are listening, because this begins at least to capture, a small segment of the ideas that people have put forward. If we just look at the questions, you don't get it, in terms of the open-ended questions. This starts to say, here's what we've been hearing.
So Dennis, so are you saying this is essentially the beginning of the output? So, okay.
Yep.
And so with that then, so it's not about a question about do you want a livable Littleton? It's more of, so what we're hearing is that we want a livable Littleton. A livable Littleton means these things.
Right.
A dynamic Littleton means these types of things. Do you guys agree? Does that make sense?
You're
This-
trying to build momentum to the end.
Okay, good.
This is kind of nitpicky, but the photographs should have people that are living in them.
Okay.
The house with the big white garage front door, I'd rather have kids playing outside or something to show that people are living in the community.
Do I even want to ask the question, is that house in Littleton?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it even,
One actually is in Littleton.
Is it really?
The other two are not. So.
But this isn't intended to say, this is about it doesn't mean it has to be something that's in Littleton now.
Yeah.
These are examples of different housing.
Yeah, and in some cases that we don't have anything comparable in Littleton. In this case, we could certainly find something. Yeah. So.
You're cruel.
But it's almost like you don't want them to judge what's in Littleton. We're wanting to.
That's true. That's
Right?
a good point. Yeah. Like the top one here is not in Littleton. We're not sure where this is. I've got to ask Craig when he comes back where he found it. We're debating where this is. If anybody knows, let me know.
Actually, it's a pretty sad commentary that in order to look for stuff like this, we're having to reach outside of Littleton for most of it.
or even Colorado.
Well, I don't know.
Unfortunate.
Particularly when we say about maintaining, expanding upon Littleton's charm. And we've got redevelopment infill projects, so we certainly could use Littleton slides for
I mean,
this.
if we were perfect already, then what are we discussing?
Well, that's true, too. Yeah, exactly. And some of these we probably don't have. I mean, we're just not going to have some of the stuff that we're talking about.
Didn't we just do dynamic? Oh, go backwards.
So,
So livable,
Take out the
dynamic,
do your-
and
yeah,
outdoor.
we'll get rid of all. Okay, an outdoor Littleton, and this is what it means. It would be improving the trail network at centralized main city park, utilizing the riverfront more, and we heard a lot about that in terms of how to activate the riverfront, both with retail and residential and recreational uses. A splash park, for example, a lot of people thought would be a great idea.
This reminds me of the prior question about whether or not we have enough things for families and children to do.
Right.
And I think there's a follow-on question to that about whether it's the right types of activity. There's a lot to do here for families, but is it what they want to be doing?
Right. Because what we heard here is we don't have a free splash park in town. You know, we've got
I'm going to
splash parks that are
suggest
skate
the more generic you are in this, the better. When you start getting into specifics, you start getting people saying, why would we want to do that? And that skews the whole answer to the question.
We put things in, we heard a lot, I guess, as much as anything. So I could see leaving Splash Park out, except we did hear it a lot. So, but, we could certainly talk about more activated, uses or something, for kids.
Instead of splash park and skate park, maybe dedicated activity areas or something.
But
Leave
that
it
is something
generic.
You don't know what that means.
I actually I like
this.
Okay, but there are going to be people who say, skate park, not in my neighborhood. I'm going to vote against this just because I don't like that part. I'm saying, keep it generic. Don't give specifics. That it's like certain political candidates who want to broad stroke their future policies. They don't want to give you details because somebody's going to object to the detail. Keep it generic.
But I think it's okay that we hear the
that's
objection,
what
too.
is being put on the Inspire Littleton. I think that's important to put on.
Yeah.
That we're hearing.
This is
that,
what we've been hearing, yeah.
At least we hear it.
Specific. It's specific.
No, we're not going to vote on it.
Well, other than yes or no.
That's kind of what it
No,
means.
we're
but
not gonna vote.
This
We
is
said
not
we're not gonna
all-inclusive, and doesn't mean that all these things would happen. So definitely,
Right.
we're really looking for this general category of this is what Littleton wants to be, because we want to have an outdoor life, and really focus on that.
Are you intending at that part of the discussion that each slide, outdoor, dynamic, whatever the other one was, vibrant, gets discussion points, or can we lead this to a momentum point?
Good question. We can do it either way. I would rather lead it to a momentum point in terms of, are we on the right track for our vision? I'm not sure exactly how we do that.
I'm thinking you could take these 5, 6 slides, whatever it is, boil them down together.
Right.
And say, do you want a dynamic Littleton, meaning it has mixed use,
Oh,
it has
we do
retail?
have- we do
you want
have
an
that.
outdoor Littleton, meaning it has
Sure.
parks and trails?
That we've
Do
got.
you want a vibrant Littleton, meaning it has all this stuff?
Right.
And the bullets there are your talking points, but you're getting the audience motivated to start saying
Absolutely.
what they want.
Well, and we actually end with that. We end with, I think we still have a slide that has all the categories, but not the details. So, yeah, okay, good. So Littleton with a vibrant downtown, and here's what people saw as elements of that. And we're going to change parking amenities just to, I think, parking, because I'm not sure what the amenities are. But so,
Please spell out Todd. Spell it out.
Oh, sure, we can spell out Todd, absolutely, you bet.
What does Todd mean?
Yeah, what kind of housing is transit-oriented development?
development.
Transit-oriented development.
How is that a type of housing?
I almost feel like this is a combination of all the other ones, or some.
Is Todd on here? Todd? Oh, there it is, thank you. Thank you.
So Dennis, this one feels like a combination or bits and pieces of all the others. So at the end of the day, to have a vibrant downtown, you're saying you have to have different housing, or you're saying you have to have accessibility. You talk about a park again. So this almost just feels like a.
I guess what's different is once you get
all of
to
the above create a vibrant.
But, well, I think so. I guess the question is having a vibrant downtown a focus for the city? Is it something that is important enough that we call it out, as opposed to a vibrant South Broadway?
I missed that.
Does it make a difference? So I think it's the larger category that we're looking at. And I agree with you. It really is repeating a lot of stuff, how we get here. But I do think one of the bigger questions we have to deal with is, should this be a focus? Because we did hear it a lot, and people aren't saying they're here because of downtown. They don't say, I love downtown. But it certainly has always been a focus for the city, and we need to kind of question that, I think, a little bit, at least visit that. So, Karina,
I could wish we had given as much time to things like the library, museum area, and the parks around that as downtown. In a lot of ways, that is every bit as significant and characteristic of Littleton as downtown. To have neglected it
certainly what
totally is...
We're not there yet.
Okay.
We haven't done that. That's why we're doing this.
Be the centralized park, too.
Yeah, it could be a centralized park. We've had discussion of that, and we certainly, if you again, you go through the comments, library and museum, library particularly, is just, it's an unbelievably popular amenity for the city that people relate to.
And you can almost make an argument that one of the advantages of Littleton is, rather than always trying to crowd every community activity into the same place, imposing the same burdens on retail, commercial, and residential in the area, we've done a pretty good job of dispersing it. We've got this activity going on over here. This activity tends to go on over there, and we keep moving it around. It gets the whole community involved. So, and that would be worth hearing. I'm not saying therefore we don't talk about it. I'm saying that I'd like to hear some people recognize that and speak to it.
Okay. We'll get rid of this one. A connected Littleton, mobility and connectivity, pedestrian-friendly amenities, filling in the gaps in the bicycle network, east-west connectivity, and thoroughfare beautification.
So it's interesting that this one just came afterwards, because, as Dave was saying, we actually can and maybe should also focus on other areas that are vibrant or have potential. But at least for me, the way I was reacting to that was, but it would be nice to have them more connected. So I could go from the library and do something more than just the library or the museum. So, how do we better connect some of those?
Which is why on the website we kept getting comments about, couldn't we have a circulator bus and that sort of thing? And I'm sure that'll come out of the discussion, too.
Yeah, so too. Distinctive Littleton, urban design principles to create dynamic spaces. Historic preservation, architectural design, we're going to get rid of guidelines, enhanced connectivity, beautification, and people-friendly spaces. That's what we've heard. So, and this will change this to Littleton slide.
We're getting repetition and overlap here, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We recognized early on when we started trying to identify how we categorized or or structured the downtown comprehensive plan, that there were going to be elements common to different topics. So it's good that people see that these are basically inseparable.
It's really hard to pull them out, yeah. A sustainable Littleton, renewable energy, garbage collection, recycling, composting, carpooling, complete streets. And we need to define what that is. It's a street that really accommodates all uses, accommodates pedestrians and bicycles and cars comfortably, and it still has life along it. So, David?
Could you put your, rather than have your headings down at the bottom, put them bold, move them up to the top? That seems to be extremely distracting. I got to read down, and I go, what's the heading? Oh, wait, it's way at the bottom.
Yeah, that's what we were saying earlier. Get the heading at the top, and then say, for example. The one thing I would like to see here is let's make more of an effort to expand it beyond sustainability in terms of touchy-feely green tree hugging, that sort of thing. Sustainability in terms of finding, repurposing existing structures or public places and that sort of thing. I mean, it's the whole community, or finding a way of allowing people to age in place by modifying their houses or looking for auxiliary structures on site. I mean, look for that kind of thing that suggests more than just the nature lovers side of sustainability.
Yeah, I think if we get into that.
I would agree with that. I would title it Repurposing Buildings.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think.
Because we heard Craig and I heard some very interesting things from the seminar on Saturday addressing that very subject.
Okay.
So.
Well, I think it's a gigantic argument for historic preservation. It really is, that the most sustainable thing you can do is work with existing buildings. So.
Well, it's also a good argument for not taking historic preservation as so sacrosanct that you don't allow new housing types, new mixed-use types to develop to keep people involved in their community. Yeah. There's got to be a balance point there someplace.
Good.
Are we communicating that Trader Joe's is the only sustainable store out there?
Well, it's the second time you showed that as if we're asking for it, which we are.
Yeah, there's a good place. That would be a good place for a picture of a building that served one purpose 40 years ago and is now serving a different purpose now.
An old Safeway.
No, wait a minute.
Our choice of, 20?
We have pictures of that, and I think that's perfectly appropriate.
I think so.
Randy and I were just talking about.
Put an old building on there.
I like it. Okay.
Or the old gas station vacuum cleaner shop, Delicios.
Right.
Yeah. Another good example.
Yeah, exactly.
More than just recycle.
I know it was mentioned, too, specifically as the garbage collection, but it just doesn't seem to belong on there to me. It's like, well, yeah, we have garbage collection.
That's sustainable, and you're right. To most people, that probably means recycling and composting,
right.
But we're really talking about
maintenance.
The community as a sustainable entity. Keeping the people here even after their kids have grown and they don't want to maintain a yard. Bringing more people in with appropriate, not just housing, but appropriate neighborhoods and locations and activities. It's all of that. And to have two of the three items or images being about recycling and garbage collection.
I think it's changing the word, right? It's sustainable. It's not accurately representing the examples that are here.
Sustainable is a wonderful word, kind of like discrimination, and somehow or other both of them got sidetracked into either the wrong connotation or a very narrow connotation.
I view sustainability as keeping something viable, keeping it economically viable, socially viable. And you want longevity in a community, so whatever you can do that maintains that longevity, you're sustainable.
And if anybody's going to start turning that, the understanding of the word sustainable in the right direction, it better be us before we launch into the comprehensive plan.
Okay, then we're going to ask them to sign priorities. This may not be the right thing to do. We may want to go through and just say, do you agree or not agree? Yeah.
I don't think you can.
Okay. Is that possible?
You just slammed 47 things in front of people.
Right.
Now you're forcing them to pick 7 headlines.
What do you think? So,
great idea.
That'll work.
You left out edgy, trendy with it, Littleton. What happened to that one?
what's a better way to approach it, do you think?
I think we just move into what.
Discussion?
What haven't we said?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Right. What haven't you heard that you
Yeah,
expect?
what have we missed? Simple question, what have we missed?
I don't know what else you got on your slide deck, but that's plenty of PowerPoint slides.
Okay.
Oh,
There.
here we go. What have we missed?
How's that look?
You could put a picture, of Rick Perry up there saying, and there was a third thing.
But I think that priority is important, right? So we didn't vote on all of those principles, so we did talk about taking out the yes or no, so we're not asking yes or no. So we're just discussing all of them. And so what you're trying to do here is summarize, okay, we talked a lot about what dynamic means, livable, et cetera. If you were to really pick the top three, it doesn't mean that we're not going to focus on the others, but how do we begin to prioritize?
Do we have to prioritize? Is it we can only pick 3 or 4, or is it a question of what's the mix? What policies, what goals do we adopt to try and promote a mix? Because we can't dictate. One particular resident of the old R5 downtown neighborhood, who shall remain nameless, believes otherwise, but we can't dictate what's going to happen. We can promote, we can find a way of trying to balance concerns for development with preservation. We can balance concerns for attracting young people while still keeping older residents involved. But to sit there and say we have to pick or prioritize, I reject that out of hand.
Were they asked online to prioritize these?
No.
Okay.
They have not been. They haven't seen these online, actually. These are the things that came out of the discussion online.
Yeah.
And as a starting point for discussion or points around which we can get discussion to coalesce, that's great. But to sit there and say, now we want you to prioritize them? No.
It's too soon.
Yeah.
And I think the Planning Commission really has to vet a lot of that out.
No, and it implies you have to choose.
Okay.
And you don't. You have to balance.
I think it's just here's a recap of what we've just been through, and then the next slide, what did we miss? And ask that question. Or do you have other comments about these 7 principles?
And your feedback will then help us decide how we can approach this, and how we find the balance point between all these principles. And that's really what we want to sell to them. The answer to this in the end is finding balance, not picking or prioritizing.
No, I think picking or prioritizing comes when we start talking about money.
Well,
Right
yeah.
now, the phase of the game I think we're at is to dream.
Yeah.
What do you want this to look? What's the vision?
Vision and goals, and then the details and the mechanisms, that's the hard sell.
And then reality will slip in soon enough.
First time somebody mentions the word TIF.
Jenny, you're looking very thoughtful. What are you thinking?
With 1 F.
Well, I definitely like asking what are we missing, because you just put a lot of different ideas in people's heads and some they're going to really relate to and think, I want that in Littleton. And others, they're probably going to go, I don't know if I want that in Littleton. So there will probably be some reaction to that, I would guess, in the discussion. That's just a hunch that.
Okay.
And then what have we missed? And so it'd be interesting to see what comes out of that.
Good.
But it'll be interesting to see how people relate to it, to see that summary.
Okay. Karina, would you be comfortable if we left priorities in there kind of generally in this?
Yeah.
In this, or you're okay if it goes away?
No, I think as Glenn said, it's almost a little too early.
Okay.
Really.
One of my favorite client review questions is what did we do more? What could we do more of, be better at, or do differently? And I don't think that question specifically is correct for this, what you're asking right now, but I think each point, if reworded, would say, what did you like about this process, and you'd like to make sure we hit on, I'm just making this up at the top, so please don't take this as fact, what are some of the key anomalies or the key strengths of our community that you'd like to make sure we pay attention to, and then what are some of the glaring weaknesses and or easy wins and or ripe opportunities that we as a city should jump on, and just expounding on what is usually a good thought-provoking question in my experience.
And whether we ask that question after we present the draft or not, they will answer it for us.
Good.
How about another category? Where are we screwing up? Where are we going down
What
the
should we
wrong
stop
path?
doing? Yep.
I'd like to get some criticism.
Yep.
Excuse me?
Yes, package it between two goods so
Yep.
that we don't skew the conversation down the sewer.
Somebody's been coaching kids.
And others. Some of them are 50.
Kids in class.
Kids are easier,
Kids
huh?
in class.
So you want to add, again, I'm sorry?
I think the essence, what do you keep doing or do more of? Like, what are we doing right? What do you stop doing, or what are we screwing up? I mean, those are all the different words for it, but it's
Better word. Yeah.
keep doing, stop.
Stop, continue,
Yep.
more of, better,
Yep.
differently.
Stop, continue,
We're all
exactly.
getting to the same place there.
Okay.
Two things we're doing great, two things we're doing poorly, two things you'd like to see us do different. Some version of that.
That's a lot of stimulation and probably not going to leave us a lot of time for listening in response tomorrow night.
It's true. Yeah, I think that's the challenge anyway, is how do we get through all of this and then have enough room for real listening tomorrow night?
Which is why it's important that you tell them up front, look, we're going to go through a bunch of questions just to see how you respond compared to how other people responded. And then we're going to start throwing out the thought-provoking, the stimulation, the questions, give us your ideas.
Okay.
So that they don't think they have to intervene between every two questions with, well, what about, and you didn't ask me, and here's what I think.
Okay.
Well, and to agree with David, drive to the point.
Mm-hmm.
Get through these, if we got an hour with these people, get through these slides in no more than 20 minutes, 25 max.
Mm-hmm.
This is great for the first 5-10. You get them pushing buttons, audience is engaged, you lay out some facts, and then you create a robust dialogue.
Yeah, the first 12 are what the community's been talking about through Inspire Littleton. The next 6 or 7 are the core ideas or principles that we've tried to boil it down into to get you thinking. The last one is, what could we do better, or have we not been doing so well, and what have we left out? And that's when you open it up for the brainstorming, the suggestions, the specifics. That's what you're leading to.
Good. Okay. That is it. So, other thoughts?
So you asked us at the beginning, should you put the video in the beginning or at the end?
Right.
I think the beginning. What do you think? I didn't know which way you were going.
Maybe even while people are settling down.
Yeah.
The question was, I think while people are coming in.
Yeah.
They're coming
Good.
in. Can you put it on a loop?
Felt
Play
a
over
little
and
bit
over
long
again
to
for the
me,
first
but if
15
people are
minutes.
just getting
Put it on a
settled,
loop.
it should be all right.
Because then it kind of starts the engagement that you want. Oh, other people are saying things. Oh, this is kind of what this forum is,
And they might.
Can you put down his children? This is Andrew's.
Andrew's kid.
Oh,
Disregard his comment. It's Andrew's. It's biased.
Yeah, just scribble on each of the slides, Andrew's son.
you got it down. Okay.
And actually, if we're playing those comments while they're coming in, it may induce them to settle down and listen to what's being said a little faster.
Yeah.
Well, I think if I heard you right, start the meeting. Hi, welcome, thanks for coming. Let's show you a video. Gets the audience engaged. Slam some clickers at them, slam some facts at them, and get to dialogue.
So I think you said that it's going to be recorded TV for the purpose of recording feedback.
Purpose of recording
comments.
feedback, right.
I wonder if there'd be a better interactive way, especially with the intern. I don't know if he's going to be available, Craig. But,
He will.
you know,
We're going to have him
Walk
live
around with the
on the board,
microphone?
too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have that, too. We'll actually have 2 people doing that just so they can trade off and so that they'll actually hear everything that's being said. So.
Okay.
So, I think it's a great way
that's
for
gonna be
people to
fun.
see it. So, I'm sorry.
That'll be fun.
So you doing the presentation from down there?
Glenn and I are going to trade off, So we may actually, I don't know, we think about where we need to do it. Generally down here, although we're facing the wrong way always. Is always the problem. That's a terrible.
And that microphone will turn around? Or
Right, it will turn around.
Maybe you can stand
Right.
That speaker that we had that told us about like the rules and laws and policies, where she kind of just stood and was more part of the group, I think was a good forum. So she was in here, but she was walking. She wasn't standing behind the podium here or
Yeah,
standing
we
behind the
might,
podium there.
we can talk to Doug and see if we can get the handheld. Or
Is that what she had? Yeah.
another
that
one.
worked
We're going to
well.
have the handheld mic for all the people who are participating. So we've got them, and we'll have 2 people wandering around, giving the mic or holding the mic for folks so they don't take it, because otherwise it sometimes goes on too long. So if we've got the control of the mic, but we have it.
I think it's better interactive for you two if you're running that somebody else is maybe running the computer. I don't know if you have enough people to do that, or because if you're talking and then your computer and then you're talking, you're going through something else. That way you can keep it moving faster, I think, as well, because you want to get through those questions fairly quickly.
But if you're both standing right here in this little corner, facing the audience, you've got your laptop so you can see what slide they're seeing at the same time. The microphone's right there. That should work pretty well. West Arapahoe Republican Forum has had candidates speak, and that tends to be what they do. If there's only two, you can put them both down there instead of having one over here and one over there. Get them right there.
Okay. Good. Okay. Other thoughts?
Pull the chairs. With that exact concept in mind, pull the chairs so the screen is clear.
Okay, good. 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 Okay.
This is good, Dennis.
Thank you. That's all we have tonight.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think next on the agenda, Glenda, do you want to talk about the current project review?
Actually, I'm not ready to talk about that. That's why that's just a handwritten note. And I guess to give you all a background, one of the things, there are a number of projects that we're working on that's going to be coming forward to you. So what we're talking to our city attorney about is how can we present them to you early, perhaps to get some initial response before you get to a formal hearing, more of a work session. So that's what that's about, and that's what our city attorney said is similar to what Dave Capp said.
Again, that was a hot topic Saturday at Saturday session, so yeah, I was kind of cringing.
Was that a good or a bad groan?
No, that was you really want to get us into that position?
My understanding is we have done that here in the past. So I believe with the marathon site, and I believe somebody said the sheriff's site as well. Now, this would be really controlled, as it would be staff presenting it to the commission, and that's it. And then we would really control as far as only identifying issues.
And presumably this will be like the slave standing in the chariot behind the conquering general returning from Rome, or to Rome, holding the laurel over his head, saying, "Remember, you're only human." Somebody's going to be standing here saying, "Remember, you shouldn't offer opinions," to all of us.
I think we need a simpler analogy here.
Well, then I assume somebody's going to be standing there saying, "Remember, don't offer opinions," before we have the case in front of us. Right. Sorry, the image is in my head. It's a little harder to put into words.
Picture too, like I see the Roman.
I lost it the all.
That's okay. I can see exactly who it's going to be, and I'm sure she'll do a good job of reminding us of that.
So then staff would present it, not necessarily the applicant.
Correct.
Okay.
Will the applicant be here? Not the applicant.
Should be.
It would be a public hearing just like this is. So anybody could show up, anybody could listen. But again, this is early yet. I didn't really even, I noticed Doreen wrote it down, but I would have asked to have it added if we were ready to.
Okay, I guess I misunderstood. I thought you were saying you were going to give us a heads up of here's what's coming your way.
Right.
Not a public hearing, starting to do preliminary review of facts, evidence, and discussion.
Right. We are going to give you, here's a project, it's coming your way. It's done in an open forum.
Public forum, not a public hearing, not necessarily
Not a public hearing. You could not ask people to come up and speak. Just like we do normal study sessions, or council does study sessions.
But the thrust of it is a heads up for us to know what's coming our way, not to generate conversation amongst us as to factors or things to be considering in advance of the presentations, right? It's okay. I don't need to say that. I think the city attorney will cover that long before we get to a hearing. Forum, sorry.
Okay. Was there anything else from staff? So I'll get into commissioners' reports. It's not on the agenda, but since we have a report to make, I'll start Dave and I, as he mentioned, went to the Planning Commissioners Workshop in Golden last weekend, and it was very useful. It was an all-day session. I didn't bring my notes, but just as an overview, there were two folks who presented from a legal standpoint, so it was kind of like the legal training that we had, but they got a little bit deeper into what the Commission can and can't do and should be doing. And then there were two that presented more from a planning commissioner, development director perspective, again, what their places are doing. One was from Castle Rock, and I forgot where the other one was from. Good information. We forwarded it to you. There's a lot of information there. I'm sure you've all read it. And now it's time for a quiz.
Yeah. Romans.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, so what did I miss, Dave? That's just a general overview, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was I hesitate to say rehash because it was a lot more vibrant and alive than a rehash. Jerry Dahl had a very good presentation on things that would have made Kirsten very happy to hear, some things that she wouldn't have been happy to hear, as far as the role of the Planning Commission and things we need to watch out for, including the old standbys about ex parte communication and that sort of thing. Just as an overview, that was his take on it. Also had Eric Heil come in and talk about codes and their application. Also heard from Bill Detweiler at Town of Castle Rock about planning commissions and comprehensive plans, covering some things. A lot of this was territory we've covered in the course of discussion. There were some new wrinkles. Most of what we got, I think what I got out of it was some of the emphasis they were putting on certain points in their presentation and some of the questions or comments they got from people with experience that maybe was a little outlying to the thrust of what the presenters were saying. So you got some unique situations that we could talk about both during the discussion and outside that. The last section was from Brad Calvert with Dr. Cogg of talking about the area agency on aging and the whole question of aging in place. So I'm going to back, I think what I'll do, maybe we both ought to take our notes and put it down and just pick out the three or four most cogent points. Most of the other stuff from Dahl, Detweiler, and Heil you've heard before, so we don't need to go over that. The business on aging, I thought they brought up some interesting questions. What they basically said was that they surveyed like 11,000 people over 60 years old in the Denver Front Range area. The results said 86% are either very or somewhat likely to stay in their community through retirement. And most of them, the most significant factor they heard when they dug a little deeper was that most want to stay where they are, but they want to replace or reconfigure their existing housing in that spot. He also pointed out that there seems to be an increasing role and need for accessory dwelling units as lifestyles, family profiles change. Parents with kids moving back, kids moving. Matter of fact, I had a great graphic where you had the main house and then an annex or a garage apartment. It starts off, the parents are in the big house and the older kids come back and they're living in the apartment. And at some point in this mix, the kids acquiring children move into the big house and the aging adults move into the more comfortable, smaller, right-sized dwelling. So that was an interesting discussion. I think, I had highlighted a bunch of other things, including things that we've talked about and we have some new take on as far as how we do things. I think one of the important ones is when we have motions, when we have applications in front of us, we spend a lot of time, both from the presenters and the audience, talking about if you vote down a proposal, you ought to do more than just vote no. You ought to then substitute a motion saying, we're rejecting it, and here's why. I'm sure that will make Kirsten nervous wherever she is, but that seemed to be a pretty unanimous opinion that it's not enough just to say no. You owe it to the community, you owe it to the applicant to say, and here's why. Kirsten's advice is going to be make sure it is consistent with zoning ordinances. But it is still something that we haven't been doing. I don't know that we've voted down that many, so maybe it hasn't been that big a driver. But we spent a lot of time at the discussion on Saturday talking about the implications of not doing it and the reasons for doing it. So there are a couple things like that that I think Craig and I can glean from our notes and put it in a one-page summary. But it was a worthwhile seminar. I thought it was just going to be a rehash, and it wasn't. There was some pretty lively and dynamic stuff coming from the presenters and from the audience. So, good session.
Was there a consensus of opinion that, what do you call it, the point of fact is needed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Overwhelmingly, you would say?
Overwhelmingly. Matter of fact, one of the presentation points from Jerry Dahl was don't get complacent. Sorry, Glenn. Sorry, Dennis. Don't get complacent and just accept and parrot back the proposed motion from staff. If you think there's something missing that needs to be included in there as the reasons why you're doing it, or to emphasize certain pieces of the evidence that support a finding of approval, put it in your motion. Don't leave it out. Anyway, that's the kind of thing we ought to, I think, pick up our notes on and talk about once everyone's had a chance to look at them. There's some good stuff in there.
And it was pretty interesting to me, the statistics going back to the aging in place, just the overwhelming aging of the population here in Colorado. They showed a lot of charts and graphics, and it's...
And coming back to the demographics that Dennis showed us, and then we over-index. I think if I remember correctly, Littleton over-indexes on that than the rest of the state. So it's even more pronounced for us.
Well, I had a discussion with Brad afterwards, and I pointed out to him that his projections on the aging component of the population, the trend on the chart that he gives charts the trend right short of the inflection point. Inflection meaning the curve's going to change. Inevitably, it's going to change. It changed 30 years ago. It's going to change 20 to 30 years from now. At some point, the baby boom bulge goes past, and the component of the population that's over 65 or over 75 is going to start going down. So when you project a chart when you present a chart that projects that before you get to the inflection point, you get a distorted view of how pertinent this is and for how long. And he agreed that, yes, probably 30 years ago, somebody would have making this presentation would have said, we need to do more to plan for families, growing families with younger children. And 30 years from now, it could be that same place. So what we really have to do is recognize there's an ebb and flow in the population. We have to be able to recognize it early enough that if we haven't already built our ordinances and our planning to accommodate it, we make those adjustments while they're still addressing the problem in front of us, not the problem that's 10 years behind us.
Any other commissioners' reports? Anybody else have anything?
I have one.
Okay.
I did present at the Downtown Colorado Incorporated, the conference, last week, and it went really well. That was in Golden as well, and it presented on Sustainability Toolkit for Family-Friendly Cities. And so I was curious, and I'll be presenting at the APA conference coming up next week. And so I had mentioned it at the last Planning Commission meeting if you wanted a consolidated overview of the slides. And it was potentially looked at for the first meeting in October, is it? Or
I was saying the second meeting in October is what I had in my notes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
okay, I wanted
to... I think
to...
it kind of depends on what the agenda looks like, so as we get there...
Okay, I was just kind of curious if that was going to be scheduled in and when it would be so that I could prepare.
And I think we were thinking the second meetings would be longer after the APA conference for you. Does that sound right? I think that's where we were heading, so...
Okay, anything else?
Craig, weren't we trying to fix a date for working sessions or last time?
We had talked about having some sort of a retreat. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, exactly.
And we haven't really had any further discussions on that. I think we wanted to get through tomorrow night's presentation, but it's a good thing to keep on the table.
Yeah, we're going to run out of time really quick.
Right.
And topics, I think, just as you go through, as you're thinking about things, what would you like to have on the agenda? So what would be helpful to you? So, because often we do a more in-depth, legal 101 or something that you think would be helpful. So,
well, I guess the question would be, with respect to the comp plan process, now that this meeting tomorrow night kind of summarizes public input, we're going into a transition period where we're going to be reflecting that into principles and goals and objectives and so on, policies. And that seems to be when we'd want to plug in. That would be most effective time for us to do a workshop like this. So, I guess in timing of the overall comp plan, does it make sense then to schedule something now for a month or two out? Or, we're getting into the holidays too, and we don't know what the upcoming agendas are going to be for these meetings. It sounds like it might be busy.
Yeah, the thought is, go ahead.
Well, October, I think, will still be open, and then we'll start getting active. So I'm trying to think how best to use your time from a comp plan standpoint. I kind of envision us putting it into a little bit more of a workable format for you guys to kind of rip into. And whether we'd have that next month, I'm not sure.
So November sounds like it might be more realistic. Because once we get to the new year, then it's maybe too late.
Yeah. Farther along. That's kind of, one thing we do have between now and the end of the year is we still have Mind Mixer available to us. So if we had some concepts that we wanted to drill down a little bit more deeper and put those out, we'd have that ability up till the end of the year. And then we lose that tool. So maybe if you want to think around that, how can we maybe put a little bit more meat on these bones and put out a little bit more complicated questions, perhaps, out to Mind Mixer to test some concepts? We have that ability now.
In terms of the board members' timing, I think we talked about a Saturday to take people's valuable weekends, but that's when...
Never done that before.
Yeah. Maybe early November, first, second weekend November, or something like that.
We can look at that, or perhaps we can poll you electronically on a couple of dates. Email.
And in terms of an agenda, I think we've had these before, and for downtown area, we certainly probably had a few of them. Maybe I don't know, Dennis, if you could pull out a prior agenda and we could start with that at least.
I would think, given what we have to accomplish in the near term, I think a lot of the agenda has to be around how do we start working through and building out the comprehensive plan. And really not stop talking about it and start doing. And then, we have time to adjust, but I think we have to start putting pen to paper.
Question, is Planning Commission working with staff going to be writing this comprehensive plan, or are we bringing in an outside facilitator company like Civitas or something along those lines that will help us write this thing, or has that been decided?
Well, we don't. I envision the staff is going to write you drafts, and then you're going to give us feedback, and we're going to do amendments and bring it back. No, I'm not looking at hiring some
money too.
Hired guns.
So it's going to be internal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tough budget year. And we're the experts. How could you hire anybody better than that?
Actually, there was an interesting comment from that on the Saturday workshop that I included in my notes. I've got one more thing I'd like to offer, and I'm going to offer it without comment. If the commissioners have not, whatever we are these days, yeah, well, that's something we ought to discuss too. In any case, in the Saturday, September 22nd edition of Littleton Independent on page 5, there's an article that I think if you haven't read, you should read. And if you haven't thought about what's in it, you should. And at some point, we might want to talk about it.
Yes.
Enough said.
Yes.
Which article?
It was the article, it was the comment from Michael Penny regarding the downtown plan.
Comments from Michael Penny regarding several things.
Okay, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Yeah.
Thank you.
Don't waste the electrons.
Thank you all.